Anime is a vast and varied medium, and if you're not already familiar, it can be daunting to find something you might be interested in watching. This is a podcast where three average anime enjoyers introduce their uninitiated co-host to their favorite anime touchstones, so he can join them deep in the Weebs. This week, we watched Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is a Japanese anime television series adapted from the original Fullmetal Alchemist manga series by Hiromu Arakawa. The series was conceived in order to create a faithful adaptation that directly follows the entire storyline of the original manga, after 2003's Fullmetal Alchemist anime series strayed away from it to tell its own story after running out of published manga material to adapt. During production of the 2003 series, Arakawa requested an original ending for the anime that differed from the manga, which was still ongoing at the time. This led to the series deviating into an entirely original storyline direction halfway through its run. The first half of the anime's plot adapts the first 7 volumes of the manga, of 27 total volumes. Production for Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood began in 2008. The 64-episode series was first licensed in North America by Funimation and was broadcast English dubbed on Adult Swim starting in February 2010. The brothers Edward and Alphonse Elric search for the Philosopher's Stone, hoping to restore their bodies, which were lost when they attempted to use their alchemy skills to resurrect their deceased mother. Edward, who lost only limbs, joins the state military, which gives him the freedom to continue the search as he tries to restore his brother, whose soul is tethered to Earth by a suit of armor. However, Edward and Alphonse are not the only ones seeking the powerful stone. Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood earned acclaim from critics and audiences and is considered one of the best anime series of all time. Reviewers noted its faithfulness to the manga and its introduction of characters and plot details that were not present in the 2003 anime. The climactic episodes were also lauded for both its action scenes and moral messages. And before we get into it, I am going to mention that this series is one that Vic Mignogna was voicing the lead for. And if you, like me, were in like high school-ish when this came out, this whole era had like him and a bunch of voice actors that appeared in a bunch of anime. But then he got canceled because there were a lot of sexual harassment claims, and there was a whole legal thing about that happened and like just finished last year, I think. But I'm mentioning that now, and now we're not going to talk about it anymore.
That being said, this was Fullmetal Alchemist, and arguably Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood as well, are synonymous because of Toonami and Adult Swim with the early double aughts, essentially. It's right up there with Outlaw Star, Bebop, Gundam Wing, Ava for variable arguments, because I'll be honest, I don't remember Ava ever being mentioned once at that age, or in that era, but that's fine. This is one of those, everyone in the anime community has heard of it to some extent, if not seen it, rewatched it, and has very strong opinions on which version is better. And I have some thoughts on that for later. But this is one of those, I think we all kind of agreed in some way should be on the list. I think Joe was the one that suggested this, though it outright.
Yeah, this one was really big when I was in high school. And it was one of like my first touchstones. Along with like I'm trying to remember what else was big at the time. I think Naruto and Bleach were the main other ones that were big. It was that and Fullmetal Alchemist. And I remember especially because the manga was influential on a lot of my friends' art styles. Like it was one of the artists that they would try to emulate in their own stuff.
I'm guilty because I conflate this with the early aughts when it was really the original anime. Fullmetal Alchemist that was popular then. And I missed even knowing about Brotherhood, because there was that time of my life in my early 20s to my mid to late 20s where I just kind of took time away from anime. So I missed that Brotherhood existed. So when I found out this was a thing, I really thought I just missed something, and I totally gaslit myself into believing the original anime was something in my head, and I was getting confused with something else entirely, and this was the whole show overall.
I just always got confused by how this was supposed to be a sequel series to Full Metal Panic.
You know, it's because of this I know Full Metal Panic, because, you know, those Google searches with those two words, you can turn up a lot of results.
I have to say, between the two, I like this one better because I haven't seen either.
Yeah,
I definitely latched onto this series hard because I really like stories with magical systems, but that are like weirdly like mathematical and like formulaic. Like it's really sciencey in the execution of it. So I fell really hard into this one.
I won't lie. This caught me for very similar reasons, but as I watched it, Brotherhood, that is, for the very first time, a la 2014, 2015, I remember really being drawn back in at the time with the message of, you know, at first it seems like, the way it's portrayed, religion wrong, science right. Then as you go on, it's like, maybe extremist views not so good. And I appreciated the nuance in that series for it. It's like, because I tend to recall, and I need to go back, I guess, and watch the original FMA. It seemed more of just, yes, religion bad, science fine, except for the few people that make magic equivalent of weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, this series has a lot of big themes. You have disabled protagonists also, which is not common.
Mm-hmm.
The very big like war is bad themes. And like the government corruption.
Speaking of the government,
Yeah.
and I think I'm going to use this as our bridge into episode 1. You know from the get-go that a government run by someone calling themselves the Fuhrer is probably up to not so good things. I'm just putting that out there.
I mean, that was the two like big flags of like the, you know, are we the baddies flags, was just like, okay, so we are like military police, and also we have state sanctioned magicians who are basically like, yeah, the people who have access to this like otherworldly supreme power are, you know, licensed by the government, so the government has control over who has its power, which means the government has its power pretty much only, and also it's led by a Fuhrer, and I'm just like,
And they tried to do a genocide.
They did try to do a genocide.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this one came front loaded with a lot of issues, but what I don't think anyone realizes their first time getting into it is it was carrying a magazine, like one of those old bandolier magazines of issues to still unload.
How long have you been waiting to use that?
Would you believe? Would you believe? I literally just thought of that on the spot.
I would.
Because I was originally trying to think of Drum Magazine, and my brain failed me until this moment.
What about a banana clip?
Ooh, banana.
But yeah, like overall, I like this series because I really like the world. There are a lot of very good characters, and I picked the episodes I picked partially like for story stuff to not give away some of the big stuff, but also to just give you a glimpse of a lot of the characters.
Yeah, I did want to say like the episodes we watched, because again 1, 2, 8, and 13 is they're spaced out enough that we actually just get like a good chunk of the way in to like the show being already in motion, but like we were hitting points about just like, okay, here's the kids, they're okay, they messed this up, now they saying like, oh, Philosopher's Stone might fix that, and then you see them like following that trail. And I forgot how much that was a like actually a kind of an overarching motivation in the show.
Yeah.
Would you believe I have been trying in the last less than 24 hours to make a
Philosopher's Stone?
Oh,
Don't worry about it. I was actually going to say Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme title that we could use it here for Ed and Al do an abomination. And I just couldn't get the music to sync up at all.
The gang dabbles in the one thing you're supposed to not to dabble in.
Ed and Al do a taboo. That's what it originally was. Ed and Al do a taboo. Followed by Ed and Al do a taboo. Oops.
All right, let's get right into episode 1, because like I do
Yeah.
have some sort of like general like series wide comments that I could make, but I don't want to lead with them, so I'll wait till they come up and I'll bring my I'll bring out my list when they're relevant.
Your 95 thesis?
Nah, it's just like 3. I got 3 theses.
Fair.
Actually,
All right.
I have a dual major. Oh.
Oh.
99 thesis, but a majoring one.
Bob, why don't you tell us about the episode, Bob?
Oh my god.
All right. Episode 1, Fullmetal Alchemist. We're introduced to a guy who decides it's really good to paint on the ground with chalk. I guess he's chalking the ground, not painting it. I guess it's good the children aren't outside playing hopscotch. We're introduced later on as learning that this guy is called the Freezer Alchemist. Which, as someone who didn't watch Fullmetal Alchemist, it's like, that means nothing to me other than probably cold powers. Colonel guy and our protagonists, Edward and Alphonse, which the first time I heard Alphonse's voice, that really threw me off. Not even gonna lie. I was expecting a deeper voice, and out comes this little kid's voice, which I thought was little girl till it was his brother.
I think he is voiced by a woman.
Ha! You going back to Mr. Freezer. He gets surrounded, I believe, by the kids first. Edward and Alphonse. And Freezing Alchemist doesn't realize that these are the metal alchemists, or that Edward is at least, because he uses his ice power, and Edward's able to block it with his arm. And apparently, because it's metal, it doesn't do anything.
There's no water in it.
That would lead to the question why they don't use metal in other places.
Yeah, you would think.
I also
Anyway.
think the Freezing Alchemist kind of is a misnomer because his powers seem to
It's
revolve around
water-based.
moisture. Yeah.
Yes, he can make steam. He could make hot water. He
He's
can
more of
freeze
a-
water.
A wet bandit, if you will.
Oh my god.
This sort of water in all of its forms is his domain.
You came with that prepared.
I did not. Would you believe me if I said I thought of that just now?
Yes.
Seems like he'd be the guy you'd want at the pool. Can you raise it by a couple degrees? I just don't want to get in yet. Oh, thank you, Mr. Freezer.
Oh, he's the only
Yeah.
one where when he gets in the pool and the water gets warmer, you're not upset by it.
Exactly.
I just need the abridged version of this show where all of his lines are dubbed over by Arnold Schwarzenegger, a la Batman and Robin.
Oh my god, yep. Nice to meet you.
Goodness,
thinking
you didn't
just-
do that. That would be
When
over
he
the top.
kills those guys, chill.
So they end up capturing Mr. Freezer. And as he's trying to get away, you see him fall to the ground and create a steam explosion. And, Batman villain escape. because no one can capture you in Steam. So the Colonel gets upset with the kids because, he explained that this is, while his name is the Freezer Alchemist, he can do stuff with water. Edward really should have been paying attention. So that's a good point. We cut over to Freezer visiting his friend, ? Crimson Alchemist?
Gimli, yeah, the Crimson Alchemist.
What does he do?
Not in these episodes that we watched.
He's not a lot. He does have powers. He will be explained much later.
He decides not to join Freezer. And the Freezer's like, you could join me. And the Crimson Alchemist is like almost offended that he'd want to be second banana. He goes off, and Mr. Freezer leaves, pushing one of the frozen guards over, explaining how he broke in.
Mm-hmm.
Which, actually, that's kind of cool. Because it explains how he got in. You just aren't assuming, he's, Steam sneak off. You back.
Sorry, it's just the weirdest spin-off show from the Great British Bake Off is the Great Alchemist Sneak Off. Sorry.
I mean, it could be still a bake-off, and just what you're baking.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks to this break-in, they know that Freezer is back on the loose. So everyone's out to look for him. There's a guy named Armstrong whose name is very obvious because he will tell it to you an awful lot. Because he's the Armstrong Alchemist.
Yeah.
Is he stone-based? Because he likes to put his face on the wall a lot.
He's strong-based.
You will give Alex Louise Armstrong the respect he is due as the almighty himbo.
He also has
yes.
a sister who's a general, and she's awesome too.
Would you believe his sister is more fearsome than he?
As long as she doesn't put her face on everything. Because Armstrong catches up with Freezer, and when they see the fight and him backing away, you just see Armstrong's face on bricks flying through the sky.
Yeah. He puts his face on stuff.
That is the Armstrong technique, and you will respect it.
I will consider that. Because it's a big ol' fight, obvious fight, boys go and rush to help out. Armstrong actually puts up a pretty strong fight, unfortunately, for me to compliment him. But it's at this point Freezer does his weird magic alchemy stuff. And he creates a circle of ice to keep people from getting out.
Well, he uses... Okay, so alchemy...
Uh-huh. Okay, okay. Listen.
Buckle up, Bob.
To, do alchemy, you have to create an alchemy circle, which is basically, the instructions for the spell or whatever.
And that's what makes the Fullmetal Alchemist unique, is he doesn't need the circles.
Right.
It's not a spell, it's science.
Yeah. It's magic with rules.
I feel like we need to have an acknowledgement of terms. Often science fiction has science magic. This really is magic science.
Yeah.
And I feel it's important to acknowledge it in that order.
I know in episode 8 we talk about how you can't, or no, episode 2 wasn't it, where you can't give and not take.
Right.
Equivalent exchange. It comes up a bit.
Yeah. So a lot of it involves with the water guy, changing its form or its shape or structure or stuff, but you're not gonna be able to make something with more than you have. So he's basically plants a bunch of smaller alchemy circles around the city, and then when they are all set off, they connect and create a bigger one. So he's doing that to try and trap the central
police station.
Yeah.
For reasons. Because he really was upset. They spelled his name wrong and they got his nose wrong again on the wanted poster. It's all very frustrating. So they start making this big, gigantic ice circle. Some point, Freezer gets away again up to the roof so he can meet up with Fire Alchemist or the Flame Alchemist, Blazing.
Shining Finger Alchemist.
Yeah,
Roy
Flame
Mustang.
Alchemist. Yeah.
the chief who is Edwards and Alphonse's boss. And apparently him and Freezer had worked together in the war because that's how they treated the alchemists. As we hear in the future that they were just kind of the front-end soldiers. And Freezer didn't like that and got out. Be a bad guy. Fight ensues.
Like, hey, y'all did some war crimes.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And Mustang's like, that's not what it was. We were the soldiers. It's his fire atom. And Freezer creates a wall of water. It makes a point. It's ridiculous when you think about it compared to other superhero shows. If you want to stop the fire guy, just get him wet.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And promptly escapes.
Bob, would you believe that's a running joke?
Yes. I actually would, just because of comments later.
Yeah.
Where he's not useful. Because at a certain point, actually shortly beyond this, is he runs into an ice wall, tries to melt it, and his second in command, I'm assuming, the lady?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Riza
Hawkeye.
Hawkeye is the best woman ever.
The sweetest cinnamon roll in this world.
She's like, he's useless if it's raining outside.
Mm-hmm.
Just hilarious.
What is the like name of that trope of the secretary who is way more in control of the situation than
I don't know, but I am
Boss
really,
lady.
really into it.
It's very
Yeah.
common from what I've seen with what we've seen so far.
Yeah, it happens a lot in anime.
she's the real Jim Hawkins of this partnership.
With Freezer's escape, he eventually runs into the brothers up on one of the ice walls. And a battle ensues. At a certain point, Freezer, I don't know if he throws some ice or in some way, knocks Alphonse's helmet off. Come to find out, there's no body inside of that suit of armor. Dun, dun, dun. And we get a shortened explanation of what happened from Freezer, but we'll go into it with episode 2
Mm-hmm.
for detail. But he's all giggly because it's this taboo thing. And one of the boys knocks him off the ice where he hits like 17 different things on the way down. It's all bloody to a pulp. He gets to the bottom.
Like Homer falling down Springfield Gorge.
Oh my god, yes. I would also like to take this brief interruption. Joe or Nick, I forget which one of you asked, that is the behind every great man trope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, all right.
The shadow. Welcome. Anyway, boys catch up to this poor beaten up Freezer, and they're like, what you gonna do? There's no water left around. And he's like, falling back to a comment previously by Edward, that I did not mention, that the body is 70% water. And Freezer turns into a bloodbender, starts shooting his icicles at the boys, which they fend off, runs away, content to try to get away another day, if I had to guess, and runs into a sword guy. From what
The
I gather,
Fuhrer.
it's the big boss.
Yeah. He's got the eye patch. You know he's in charge.
Bob, let me just say this right now. You don't lead a government, or you don't serve any position other than the role of leader if you're calling yourself the Fuhrer in that kind of organization.
Well, even without the fear comment, you really get a bad vibe off of him anyway.
Oh yes.
Because he just straight up kills this guy without you seeing him swipe his blades. I don't know if he's like a blade alchemist or what.
Don't worry about it, Bob.
Oh, Blade
He's-
Alchemist, that would be so much cooler.
He's
Don't worry about it,
super
Bob.
scary.
Yes.
But he comes across this cheery grandpa when he talks to anyone. No one ever questions him.
Yeah, he's the hidden
Where'd the
badass.
sliced up body come from? Oh, it's fine.
It's like
Where's
I
my
handled it.
tea?
it's got some very oh, it's my sweet Uncle Corleone. It's got that kind of vibe.
Yeah,
I mean,
Woof.
like, they know he can hold his own.
very much
Yeah.
so.
They just don't know he's that scary.
And Freezer's bleeding out, and Crimson somehow knows, because I'm assuming Crimson means blood, that he's a blood alchemist.
Nope.
His full title is Crimson Lotus, I believe.
So he likes red flowers. Oh, nice.
I mean, arguably, in fashion, yes.
Episode ends with like some weird lady and her. Oh, there's no good way to describe the situation. Seems very PG.
Uh-huh.
Her gluttonous friend was on the ground eating food off of the ground, wearing a very unique outfit.
That's a very choice description, Bob, as he literally enacts vor.
Oh. They're vampires, that's all. Just your regular run-of-the-mill vampires.
You can tell who an alchemist is by their tattoo. See end.
Oh. There is really like I never noticed this originally, but on this watch I was just like, oh, there is a lot of like branding in this show.
Yeah.
Just about like, you know, the crest of the military, or like all of the uniform that the state everybody wears except for Ed, because I don't know, he's 14 or whatever.
He's a child soldier. There's not implications with that.
Like you talk about the sort of the alchemy circles, but then a bunch of people do have sort of a signature one. Like Mustang has the one on his gloves because it's related to the alchemy he always uses. So like everyone kind of has like a signature circle that they use. I never noticed that the symbol on the back of Ed's cloak is the same as his teacher's tattoo. So there's your branding. Like there is so much in this show about like just marks, and so I'll be honest here. I actually have never seen this series in its entirety, either this or the original or read it or anything. So this is almost a first watch for me too. But like I don't know what all of this sort of iconography is going, whether it's about like, oh, it's about ownership, or it's about lineage, or it's about being branded by history, or like there's a lot of sort of thematic things it could be doing, but I just never noticed how strong it was, even though I don't actually know what it's serving.
So, Joe, stop me if I'm wrong, but I believe some, maybe I don't believe all of it because stylization is a thing, but I believe the semiotics used in this are drawn from actual real-world alchemy in some parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I say, because I remember studying this in high school and then hearing about this show.
Well, so, yeah, like when we get to the gate, the carving on it is like a very well-known like tree of life Yggdrasil sort of classic iconography, isn't it?
Yep.
Which is funny because that will be coming back in another show that we're going to talk about down the line, but don't worry about that for now.
Yeah, it's fine.
But yeah, so like it is, it's doing something. Even when you, especially when we get to like Al and the specifics, the seal that is bonding his soul to the armor is just like, oh, this one is not just like, it's almost like a Tron identity disc, you know? It's just like, oh, this is the thing that keeps you alive, quote unquote. We could talk about definitions there, but like that's for a later episode.
Oh yes.
I don't know. Do y'all have any sort of input on that as having knowing more about the series.
I'm going to just kind of lightly clap back at Bob for the Bloodbender comic and push my glasses up as I say, this came first, so Avatar is cribbing off this, Bob. But otherwise, I mean, I appreciate they did what Bob highlighted with the using blood as part of his alchemic process or as an offensive weapon. The creativity of these characters in this military, and it comes up more as the series goes on, is really good. I gotta give them a lot of credit. They really pay attention to what they're using and how they use it. And then kind of like, again, the trope of watering down the hothead, as it were. Yeah, Mustang, fire, incredibly powerful and dangerous. Oh, by the way, here's a hose, why don't you cool off? It's really nice. They get it out in front and they work with it very well. The beginning of FMA Brotherhood always kind of gets a little bit of a what's the word I want to use? Gets some detractors, and I'll discuss that later. But I still think it's good in its own way. It's a good drop.
I think general consensus is that the first series had kind of a stronger introduction to the characters, but this series is definitely, since it's like a straight adaptation of the manga and stuff, like I feel like when they made it, they're like, okay, people watching this are people who already kind of know what's going on, like.
Agreed.
So you don't need to kind of introduce them as much.
So I don't know if it's just because I knew the fact that this is closer to the manga, but like this episode had to me like first chapter of a new serialized weekly publication manga, and that was like, hey, we're gonna drop something in and we're gonna have lots of cool action and back and forth, and it really is just like kind of showing off how cool all of these dudes are without actually like kind of showing them being cool, but not like building them up any more than that, really. And there's a lot of just like, oh, this is a fire guy, this is the water guy, which, listen, in my note is Bloodbender, and also that, like, honestly, the, like, it's weird that this came before Last Airbender, because this like for being alchemists who any of them could theoretically use anything, the fact that they each have like a signature element that they work with is just like Armstrong is the earthbender, Mustang is the firebender, Freezer is which, by the way, he's a MacDougal, so he's the missing third MacDougal brother.
I was gonna come to
that. But like he's our water guy. We got the dude in prison who is just the I'm crazy bender. We have Ed, who I guess is an arm bender because he just keeps shifting the shape of his arm. But like there is this like, I was getting like
very strong elementalist vibes.
But specifically, I was like, man, this feels like it's doing what Airbender did, but it's not. I want to say it's not doing as good a job, but just Airbender is such a good show, so it's like one episode compared to a series is what I'm doing in my head, and that's not fair. But like, I don't know. You tell me about like. You tell me about like, oh, alchemy and transmuting. I don't think about like creating giant ice spears,
right?
And it's just like, oh, like that's just not what I associate with alchemy. So it's just like, oh, you're using these words, but you're kind of doing this other thing, which is cool and can be turned into something cool, which they did with Last Airbender. And I don't know if that's what they're doing here, but
I think that I would say the series has more Korra vibes than Airbender vibes, but that's just.
Oh, sure. Like this one, being much more like a much more industrialized environment.
Yeah.
I appreciate how they do it, I guess, a little more than an Airbender, because like, okay, there is a quote unquote science, and I am using that so loosely. Believe me, I'm not saying it's hard science, not capital S, but it's one of those, if you let yourself flow with it, it's okay. There guys using the moisture in the air, so there's a reorganization of the element, or the not elements, excuse me, the atoms and molecules. Like, okay, I can loosely follow this fiction, this magic science, enough to say I'm cool with it. And that's kind of where it worked for me. It wasn't just, I cast Firebolt. It's, no, I've got to have these specific things, including gloves with my magic circle on it, to do it. Otherwise, I'm useless.
Also, his gloves specifically are made of a material that when he snaps, it makes a spark.
Yeah, they're like flint infused or something.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
the circle lets him like use that spark to create fire.
Yeah, it's essentially he's got a spell circle on standby. It's always on on call, ready to go. He just has to snap, and
so he's got that. The Freezer guy has one tattooed on his hand. The Crimson has one tattooed on his hands. Armstrong has one on his like brass knuckle dusters. So like it would really confuse me when the guy was just like, oh, you transmuted without a transmutation circle. And I'm just like, every single person you've met so far has had like an inbuilt, they don't gotta draw one. Like, how do you know, like could I just have one like tattooed on my thigh and could I just have all of them tattooed just like straight down my leg, like on DJ's pants where it says maximum?
No.
I can't just have them all queued up at once and ready to go. Like, but still the idea of just like doing it without a circle versus doing it using a circle that you can't necessarily see, I feel like are two different things. And it's really weird to me that he jumped to, you're not using a circle, when it's just like, no, people are doing this stuff at will nonstop, including you. Why are you surprised, my dude?
This is definitely one of those like first episode setups. It's like, oh, you have to see me draw the circle to know what I'm doing. And thus we make a big deal to set up a mechanic. But yes, there is kind of that hand wavy nature of he could just have it, etched into his metal arm somewhere.
Yeah.
But he had that notoriety from the way it sounds in the episode, so he knows there's just this one person with a metal arm, oddly. And must be Fullmetal guy.
There's a little more to it than that. It's not just, there are plenty of people, and you'll see it later in the series, that have these metal prosthetics, what are called, oh god, it just left automail. There it is, saved it. And so having that doesn't necessarily make him distinctive enough, but it's the being able to transmute and being a transmuter who has this metal arm, and I don't remember if they know about the leg, but definitely the arm, and doesn't need a transmutation circle, working in their organization. So they do have that amount of knowledge, so that would make him recognizable.
I think the way it would work is that if he had a circle on his arm, on the metal arm, like that would explain him being able to transmute the arm into the different shapes and stuff, but it wouldn't let him do everything else he does.
Like make the spear out of stone, for example. Right. Yeah. And that's a good point. They are all limited within their wheelhouse of whatever specialty element they've chosen to work with, whereas he can work with anything without needing additional support.
And I think that kind of makes sense too, like if you're studying it, like you find what works for you, what makes sense to you, and then these are all people who are used to using it in like a combat setting, so you're going to be using kind of the same thing that you just have most strongly like connected with repeatedly, rather than getting variety with it, just because like that's what you're gonna do.
Not every soldier's a sniper, not every soldier's a demolitions expert, for variable definitions.
And depending on how smart you are, how creative you get with it.
Which is, again, why I really love the setup with the freezing alchemist. Isaac McDougall was his name. Because there's going to be a 50-50 draw. There's going to be audience members that don't catch on to water body, a lot of, okay, that makes sense. And then there's going to be those, well, why doesn't he do that? This delivers a two-punch of, hey, for those of you that weren't expecting this, here you go. And for those of you that were questioning of it, shut up, sit down, and keep watching.
Yeah, a couple later episodes too, I think they did a good job of just like, I was sitting there going like, hey, how come we're not just gonna do it this way? And then like right afterwards addresses like, oh, here's why that didn't happen. So I'm like, okay, so you are thinking these things through, even if your science gets real loosey-goosey pretty often.
That's what I say. This is lowercase magic science.
Yeah, but like Arakawa put a lot of thought and attention into how it all works.
Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, why I appreciate it a little bit more than the Airbender.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, I specialize in this because this is the tribe I'm from. There is a plausible line of thought in this lowercase science.
All right, so the Fuhrer gives Mustang and the Elric brothers credit for dealing with people.
Yes.
And that's where we end the episode.
Well, his best friend tells him this, Hughes.
Yeah. Another character to introduce you to. Their whole crew is great.
Actually, no, because this episode ends on
the cliffhanger with the lady and the dude.
Well, it ends on the phone call of them talking to unknown person, essentially confirming that Isaac had a very small philosopher's stone that fell out of him after he died and fell apart.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what Kimberly sensed.
Well, I was actually.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, there was a shot like when he got sliced up.
Oh, I saw the thing roll out and go poof. I didn't know that was the Philosopher's Stone.
Well, it was a thing that was amplifying his
fair
power level.
I feel we can call it that because the boys asked him outright at one point, "You're doing this. You have to have a Philosopher's Stone."
Right.
But they didn't say whether it was on him, or I didn't get whether it was on him or it was somewhere else.
I believe the implication is that was literally in him because it fell out with his blood.
Yeah, did he like eat it or something? Did he have it under his tongue? Did he just
No,
pop it in
I
like
was
a
just having
jawbreaker?
that thought, and I were thinking the nice ways.
Up the butt?
I
mean, you gotta take that stuff across the border.
I was like, if you're trying to smuggle a stone. But yeah, it ends with our two unidentified characters, Lady in Black and the Gluttonous Man. In wherever they're taking this, whatever locale they're taking this phone call in, it's in what looks like a church, and they are clearly aware of setting up some kind of plan going forward.
They are inside of a church, inside of a blood moon, because it is all red and black, and I'm like, wow, this is...
Yeah, episode 3 is pretty good too, but that's my problem. It was like this show is. I think this show is really good in a lot of ways, and it was really hard to pick episodes.
I actually wanted to congratulate you. You chose, in my opinion, the best episodes to draw in without giving away too much, but giving just enough.
Thank you. I tried. All right, so episode 2, we get called The First Day. Is a flashback episode, so we get to see what the boys did.
And naughty, weren't they? Although we don't know how bad till the end of the episode. Well, not the end of the episode, but throughout.
Yeah.
Start with them talking about why they're doing what they're doing. And we cut back to when they're kids. And apparently I guess this is my own lack of knowledge. I don't know if alchemy is something you learn or something you're born with. I feel like it's something you learn.
Yeah, it's like science. Like once you know the formulas and like the math involved or whatever.
Which like
and
going back to the idea of, state alchemists, the idea of just like, oh, this is something that anybody could do, but also we clearly have this like licensing hierarchy, like certified practitioners kind of thing. It's just like,
Yeah.
okay, so it's not available to everyone, is what you're telling me. Okay,
Right.
interesting.
And there are some people who like study it to get grants from the government, like to like sponsor their research, and like most academic setups, but with magic.
From what I gather, these kids kind of learned from their absent dad.
Yeah, they're
Probably through
poking
books.
around in his office and going through his books.
They seem to be rather gifted at it from the way that their mom describes it, because they're like, hey, Mom, look what we can do, as she comes in to see them drawing on the ground.
Also, a
And-
note to learn about anime: if your mother character has hair like this, they are going to die.
And that happened 5 minutes later. She was nice until the epidemic came along and took her away.
Uh-huh.
And then
COVID's a bitch.
Q really sad. They're sitting next to the grave. I'm hungry. It's cold. Boom. Orphans.
Oh my god. Well, I mean, they have a dad somewhere.
An absent dad.
He'll
Doesn't even care.
He'll be back from transmuting milk one day. You'll see.
North, it's fine. He just lives on the farm. They go live with this lady and their daughter. And
Yeah, they're neighbors and childhood friend Winry and Winry's grandmother, I believe.
Yes, Panako.
Yeah.
Winry is the best and does not deserve to be a side character to these two dimwits.
I agree.
That's
This is
She gets more screen time later on.
I do enjoy the argument about. Oh, and that was something that was part of this first episode that's continued here, and actually throughout the episodes we watched, is that Edward does not like being called small.
No.
but him is a small.
You will notice that
That's like a trigger.
his little brother's taller than he is. He's shorty.
Vastly.
Oh, he's got short man syndrome.
He does have short man
He gets in an
Oh.
argument with Winry about their distinct statures. I believe it was short old hag, something to that effect.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that was Panako. Panako was the short coat old hag.
Was she?
Yes.
That's right. Winry's the daughter.
He's so
The
tiny.
granddaughter, yes.
I like Pinocchio them better. Sorry, I don't put too much weight into
Oh, no.
Winry.
You are
Oh,
correct.
fine.
Panako is great. All of the
Everybody's
women in
great.
this show are fantastic.
Oh yeah, that's another great thing about the show, with a lot of fantastic female characters.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming the boys somehow brought all their books over to Pinako's house.
No, they still live in their house.
What?
They just spend time over there.
Yeah.
That does not seem safe at all.
Don't worry about it, Bob. It happens in anime.
The middle of the countryside, that's how you live.
Ah, yes. Ignore fires.
Yeah, well, they're just gonna. It's a kind of rustic village where you just let the kids go wander out in the woods, and sometimes they don't come back, and that's just life. It makes sense that they would live on their own with no parents, just in a house
That is the cyclical nature of life.
with the secrets of transmutation and possibly the human soul just sitting on the shelf.
I don't know what kind of books their dad had, but that was one of them, is trying to bring a soul back from death because they wanted their mother back.
Yep.
So Edward's fairly certain he's figured out the
Very
formula.
taboo. Also, something I remember in high school is that any fans of this series all had the list of ingredients for a human body memorized.
Oh
Mhm.
my god, yeah.
So I have a critique on that.
Uh-huh.
I feel needs to be addressed in the moment.
Uh-huh.
Is every single human made up of the just exact same
No.
amount?
That's where they went wrong. They didn't have their mother's size when she died.
Average.
And that's just it. Like, yeah, I get that's supposed to be an average, but the thought in X amount of years since I first watched this, even for FMA, it finally occurred to me. Wait a minute, you're telling me we're all the exact same amount? Hold on.
What you don't realize is that their mother actually had 6 toes.
Oh.
each foot.
Oh.
They didn't take that to an account because guess what? It doesn't work. And as the world turns red, an eyeball pops open in their circle. You see, and this is where a different flavor that I like. I like comics, so it's reminiscent to me of the way they stylize witchcraft deleting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just see block pieces coming off of these poor children. First, we see it happen to Alphonse, who just disappears, and Edward screaming as he just slowly gets deleted himself. We see him wake up in a room with a weird little static man, woman, person, and a big wall with doors. And the man, woman, person introduces himself as all, as God, as Edward himself. Says, "Here you go. This is everything you want to know." Regardless of, go ahead.
This is Kingdom Hearts.
Wait, hold on, Kingdom. Hold on. That probably is the only way to understand Kingdom Hearts shots fired. Yeah, this is that scene of everyone and that with the monkey's paw that's ever said, "I want to know everything." Okay, here we go.
It's like, it's like Clippy pops up and is like, "Oh, so you want to tamper in God's domain?"
Oh no.
You want to stick your head in the bucket of knowledge? All right, here we go.
Breathe deep.
Door opens and Edward is pulled in. And as he explains it, he is literally learning everything, and it is just too much for his body. And once again, his body parts slowly start fading out as he's learning and learning. And by the end, you just assume, he's dead, but he's completely fine, or appears completely fine as he's on the ground. And I know all alchemy. And all walks up to Edward and is like, "Here you go. You know it all." And Edward's like, "Oh." And all it's like, "Just don't forget there's the law of equals." Or how is it put? Equal exchange?
Law of equivalent exchange.
So to gain all this knowledge, you've already paid for it, so here you go. Edward's confused till he looks and sees that part of his leg is still gone. And he flashes back, he's in the room with his brother being gone, as well as part of his leg. He's kind of distraught for reasons I just don't understand, but we'll continue with this.
Well, like,
go ahead.
In the moment there when he's pulled through the doors, like, it is like these sort of like goopy hands that pull him in, and he's learning everything everywhere all at once. And he's just kind of like, it hurts. My brain is not big enough. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts. And then it snaps back to standing outside the door. And immediately he's just like, "Hey, wait, that was cool. Let me do it again." And I'm just like, whoa, hold up.
Knowledge is a hell of a drug.
Like, that is...
Needs to learn one more time.
I just love that. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. No, wait, let me do it again. Like, that is, if you want to talk about like straight to the point characterization, I love that moment.
Does he know kung fu?
Probably. Yes, actually.
Yeah, actually.
I love how the gremlins too was like, no, you gave me one leg, you get 3 seconds in there, and that's it.
Yeah. That's just your first taste. This is to get you coming back.
The first taste isn't free.
But yeah, so the law of equivalent exchange is humankind cannot give anything without first giving something in return. And that's why the idea that bringing someone's soul back is impossible, because it's like, how do you figure out the value of a human soul and give something as equivalent exchange for that?
I mean, how about a human soul? Just one for the other.
Yeah,
just
that's
I just gotta
how it goes.
I just gotta RMA this soul. Hey, hey, can NVIDIA? Can you just?
Panako, you busy? I need you for something.
Cool, but I mean, yeah. An eye for an eye, a mom for a mom. Why not?
But yeah, so Ed has lost a leg and his brother.
and he really wants his mom back. He's calling out for her. Then he looks up, and then there's this grotesque body slowly doing the ring crawl at him. For whatever
Quote-unquote
reason, that
mom.
yeah, we assume that it's his mother because she's coming back for him, and he freaks out. I believe she disappears.
No.
She stick around because he somehow bandages his leg, crawls over. But
Yeah, it dies because it's like not formed properly.
There is a Simpsons Halloween special where Bart made this weird frog prince amalgamation, and the line, "I shouldn't be," applies in this situation.
Huh.
Yeah.
Does it die? Because I swear that there is
Oh, they might have had to kill it. I forget the specifics.
I want to say like the grandmother comes over and is just like
Yeah.
somebody makes a mention like we
Somebody
had to clean up
handles
your
it.
mess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It might have been
Panako
Mustang
saw it.
once they got there.
Panako went back to see it after the boys arrived at her place. And in the original FMA, and it is implied here, I'm assuming it's 1-to-1 here, that the house eventually got burned down. But yes, in the original, I think she got burned down in it. Whereas in this, it's no, we took care of your quote unquote mom.
ultimately, mom is taken care of. At this point, there. And Edward is desperate to save his brother and decides to pray and hope as he inscribes this rune on this body of armor. His brother's soul is saved.
Some quick thinking on his part.
All right, you know what? Because I was about to ask, hey, if you can just whip this out, especially if you can do it under the duress of the like pain of an impromptu leg amputation, and you can just do this successfully, how come you didn't just do that with your mom's soul? Because like, hey, like
They
They
didn't
didn't
know.
have the
Like
knowledge.
this is years later.
Mom has ceased to be. She is no more.
well, I
If
mean,
she was dying from the epidemic, was he gonna like let me put you in this pillow that you're laying on?
Ed was or Al was gone too. Like he brought him back from the other side. Their mom's just on the other side too.
I mean,
She's gonna turn
Al's
into a
been gone for
scarecrow.
seconds.
Yeah, she's
Mom's
been
been gone for years.
Listen, I'm just like I saw Disney's Hercules once. They all
That's
just
a good
live in this
question.
tornado.
Is
You
there
can
a
just reach
time
in and
frame
pick
on
one
that?
out.
I mean, I agree with you. There is some, forced hand wavium here, but
Oh, I don't think
yeah.
so. I think it's that Alphonse was still kind of in the process of leaving.
I
Whereas
think
she
he was
just
long
left.
gone though.
Well, here's the thing. It wasn't even a natural death. Like at least with the mom, it was the epidemic. It was a natural death. It was a natural process of things. Al was taken as
Sucked in as an ingredient.
Yes, he was, tribute in a sense. He was an ingredient in the exchange, which is weird because he was also, part of casting the exchange. And we can talk again more hand.
Trying to do all the souls, fuck shit up, fucks the
I
rules up.
get you.
Yeah, no. So this is actually sort of like sums up my whole experience, even just in these episodes. Is just like they do something that to me makes no sense and feels like they're breaking logic, and then they do address the break in logic later.
Right.
But I've never seen enough of the show to see the other thing. I don't know how much we had left to say about this episode. But
We're at around the halfway point.
oh, okay. Then, because the only thing I was going to say is like, maybe we can talk about it more later. But like, I was a bigger fan of the way the non-Brotherhood opened, and episode 1 of non-Brotherhood is like literally episode 3 of Brotherhood, and the way it approached it, the way that it like the pacing and order with which it introduced like characters and ideas, I thought was just so much stronger.
That's what I was dancing around earlier when I said this. The beginning of FMA Brotherhood gets some flack because there is that dependence on having watched the original anime and being familiar with that opening, because there's characters we're going to meet in one of these other episodes that really don't get the full explanation that they did in FMA.
Mm.
As such, there's a lot lacking there. But then again, this was made to essentially satisfy an audience that already existed.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah.
After this,
Let's
After that
keep
brief
going.
aside,
yes, cut back to the present to see brother's boss, whose name is Mustang. Yes. They're getting a final report from the smarter lady, and the lady asks about why she put Edward and Alphonse on this case, and why did you even bring them in? They're introduced to how Mustang met them, which is due to them hearing about this alchemy that was taboo and coming to inspect it, because he heard that there was an alchemist out there who was strong enough to even get as far as they did. I feel like.
Yeah, that's one of the things state alchemists do, is they like investigate occurrences and people fucking around with shit.
it's almost like they're trying to police the magic.
Mm-hmm.
So he meets Alphonse and finds out about the accident, that Alphonse is now just the suit of armor. And I'm assuming that the reason why Edward doesn't have an arm is because that's what he had to sacrifice to
Yeah.
Alphonse.
Yep.
He lets them know that granted to try out for the police squad, which Akko and little girl aren't too keen on, because he is talking to lady cop. It's like,
Frieza.
I don't like you. What? What's her name?
Riza, Hawkeye.
Ah, yes, Frieza. I'm glad that he finally made an appearance.
Ah,
Can't wait to
Speaking
get
to her.
the Cell Saga.
She doesn't like the police because they made a war and all they did was kill people, including her father.
well, they got killed as a result of the war, but they weren't killed by the military.
But it was a tragic part. Frieza is like, it's up to them, and then they have this back and forth talk about how great the police are. If they choose to join, which we can positively conclude from episode 1 that they do. They bring them in so they can get training. Al doesn't actually have any alchemical abilities. Edward clearly does. First meeting, training, or I guess it's a little while later. He meets up with our Fuhrer, because he's there to observe all of this training, including Edward, who's there because he heard about this great alchemist. He challenges him. Or no, it's more that Edward's like, this is bad for you because I could have killed you on the spot. And, Fuhrer like, ha ha ha, no, and walks away, as the staff that Edward alchemically pulled from the ground split in two, showing that he really is a blade alchemist at this point.
The cut alchemist.
I need you to not tell me that's actually what it is.
No, it's not, but I'm just playing
thank
off
the
because
Lord.
he cut it.
You see him around cheese, it really starts to stink. Cue back to the brothers, and they're continuing to look for the alchemical stone, or not alchemical stone, oh my goodness.
Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah, Philosopher's. It's a Sorcerer's Stone, I read the book. And,
The MacGuffin.
yes. That they're hoping will be able to get them their bodies back, whether it be an arm and a leg, or a whole body.
Yes.
And Sans episode.
Yeah,
That
more or
brings
less.
us up.
I think, and maybe I misinterpreted something. I got the impression that really what Mustang was after was not Al, or not Al, excuse me, Ed, but more after their father, because I don't believe he had any knowledge of what had happened of the attempt at restore mom. He just knew there was a powerful alchemist, or a rumored powerful alchemist out there, and instead he finds these two boys.
Well, how how long had the dad been gone then is my question there.
Years and years.
It had been a couple of years, I believe, not, but I don't think it was terribly long. It's something
like,
that comes up later.
Like, he's gone when they were little, and then even after several years before they...
Like, I want to say ballpark 5 years. Because yes, they are little, but arguably they're still little. But yeah, I get the impression like Ed was maybe he's what, 14, 15 in this when we first meet him, so I get the impression he was like 10. Well, no, he had to be like 13 because he said he got the automail, said I'd be ready in a year. So 13, 14. So he may have been like 9 when his dad left. It's been a while, but again, Joe, you may know better than I do.
No, I just remember that it was like, if you figure that it was a couple years between when the mom died and when they tried to bring her back.
Yeah, because there's a specific line about like they trained for years.
Yeah.
In their
That's true. I forgot about that. Yeah, they went to train with teacher for X amount of time. Yeah.
Could their teacher have been the powerful alchemist?
She lives elsewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
She lives essentially on the other side of the country.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think Al doesn't like remember their dad at all.
Yeah, I think Al at most has like, yes, this figure was there. That was Dad. This amorphous shape.
Yeah.
Because he was, I don't want to say toddler, but a toddler adjacent. Like he was able to get up and walk around. I remember that, but not like necessarily full forming memories years old.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess you're right. For some reason, I just got the impression it was always their dad they were after, or implied it was their dad they were after.
Oh,
episode 8.
Yes,
third
episode
episode
8.
that we watched.
I just think it's funny because it's like episode 3, but it's episode 8, the 5th laboratory.
The 5th column.
This episode opens up with the brothers separated. Alphonse is outside with a guy with butcher knives almost.
Yes. Butcher's cleavers, which are very important.
And he introduces himself as 66. And he's just this dude in a suit of armor, as far as we know. To inside, there's Edward. And they're busy looking for the Philosopher's Stone, as is their right.
Yeah, this laboratory, had some...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a laboratory next to a prison, where raw materials...
If I may, because there was the last time on kind of at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I will give you the summation that I have here. So Ed now know what it takes to make a Philosopher's Stone. The secret ingredient is people. They go to the 5th lab next, which is quote unquote abandoned, and just happens to be next door to a prison. I'm sure this means nothing.
Because Edward finds a rune or an alchemy circle in the middle of the room, and he's like, "Oh, this must be it." And then another armor-clad dude comes out and says, "Yes, it is." His best Sith Lord voice. He has a sword, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or some other bladed. And goes to attack Ed. And Ed is able to block it off with his arm. He introduces himself as 48, I believe.
Yes.
Let me check my notes. Yes, 48. As they're fighting, Edward notices a familiar sound. Sound like maybe there's nobody in this armor. 48's like, yes, that's correct. They stop long enough for 48 to remove his helmet. Because Ed was like, you got a rune. And he's like, yes, it's right here. And Ed's like, you shouldn't have shown me that. That lets me know how to defeat you. Which leads to a lot of questions for me and Alphonse being in situations of fighting, but neither here nor there. 48's like, yeah, I showed you, that way it's a better fight. They go back to fighting, and I'm assuming previous episode, Edward gets an upgrade to his arm, or repairs, or they use a different material because his arm is not working as well as it normally is.
Yeah, it got maintenance.
And I don't know why they used something different.
TLDR, better, faster, stronger.
And it's
If I
Winry,
remember-
right?
Yeah.
Yes, they went to visit all grown up Winry.
Decided that he needed weaker materials?
Lighter materials. They can break more easily, but there are benefits as well to them. It's a trade-off kind of thing because nothing perfect.
Actually, it was really fun because like when Ed was like, "Oh, something feels wrong with my arm," and then he flashes back to that, like the way he says it, I got like F1 vibes about like, there's something wrong with the suspension, and then you just got to take it back to the pits and just like 18 more degrees, and then take it out for another qualifier lap. It's just like, I want to see that.
Yeah, I was kind of on that. It's like, this machine moves so much better now, or it's harder to control. It's like, well, it's lighter now.
Which I suppose in a short run is good, but anything long or anything difficult, i.e. fighting Robot Man here, well, not Robot, which opens a question for later. We cut away while Edward is asking 48 all these questions about how to make a Philosopher's Stone, to which he doesn't know.
He's like, I don't know, I just guard the place.
I just work
here. Exactly. We go back and see Mustang asking about how things are going. And he says, like, oh, this is inconclusive. It is what it is. She's going to let the brothers go. We go and see that the two people that were supposed to be watching them, for reasons I'm not 100% sure.
They were under guard by Armstrong's order.
Yeah.
For their protection.
They knew they would come to the 5th laboratory
Mm-hmm.
and start
guess-
poking around.
And they were told no.
So they find out that they escaped and are rushing off to find them.
Correct.
48 and Ed continue their fight, and then they start talking about how 48 brought his partner, and Ed's like, well, is he as strong as you are? No, is he a strong fighter? 48's like, yeah. Is yours a strong fighter? Edward's like, yeah, I have yet to beat him in a fight.
Yeah, Al always wins their sparring matches. That's the thing.
He never beat him. He is. Edward can't beat those bigger than him.
Mm-hmm.
So they're fighting, and at one point, Al knocks off 66's head. And he's like, oh, aren't you scared? Ooh, why am I an empty body? And Al's like, no. And lifts off his own head, and 66 freaks out.
Why are you an empty body?
That was comic gold. Then they get into a weird philosophical debate about whether Al is Al, if he's just a golem thinking he's Al. And that's, a good question for all of them.
It kind of fucks up the 14-year-old's head.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Gaslighting even a disembodied 14-year-old is never okay.
You cut back. Oh, go ahead.
Can we say that he was disembodied and then re-embodied?
Disinhuman-bodied. Disinhuman?
Huh?
Recorporealized.
Okay, alright, go on. I'll think about that one.
Edward and 48 continue their fight, with 48 nearly getting him. So Edward blows up his body and kind of gets blown up into 3 pieces, if I recall, like head, torso, and legs. And he just ends up being fine. Which, I don't know why he didn't do that sooner.
Well,
It's a new technique. He's mimicking a technique that was used against him earlier in an episode.
Okay.
So it's like he knows it, but he doesn't really know it.
it's one of those, this never occurred to me till it almost happened to me.
Is it actually like a alchemy technique? Like, is he like pressing off the wall with energy?
It's actually explained as an incomplete transmutation. So, without going into a lot
It
of
takes
details,
like the energy from it,
yeah,
and directs it as a destructive blast.
yeah, it's
Okay.
Alchemy is the breaking down of something into the remaking of it. He just does the breaking down.
Oh, he makes things go away. For
Yes.
energy. Okay.
It's a dispersal of energy.
So, 66 and Alphonse, Alphonse isn't doing too well with these questions. Ed's actually a good brother, because Edward does feel that he's his brother. And we discover, I think, before this, that 48 and 66 are brothers.
No, 48 and the other half of his body. It was the head and the
Oh,
torso
okay.
were partners. And after knocking off his head, he's you beat me, but not quite.
The
And
body gets up and keeps going.
yeah, because the body, and that's why he has to decorporealize the torso from its legs, because it's like, you're just going to keep attacking because it's 2 of you.
But he doesn't kill them because he doesn't kill.
Right. This is the TNG episode, The Measure of a Man.
Child.
That too.
Eventually, we get to the point where he's going to be told, the truth about the Philosopher's Stones. Finally. Then along come Jesse and James. Put a stop to that.
You're not wrong.
They pretty much get rid of 48 and are upset that they tried to kill them. And I had to look up lust and envy. So are all 7 deadly sins in here?
Yeah.
I bet you can't guess which one the gluttonous man was.
Bless you. Envy knocks Edward out. They just leave, destroying the lab. Make sure that no one knows about the truth of 100% how to make the Sorcerer's Stones.
Well, they also drop some information on us.
Bring it on. About them being... Bring it on.
They dropped the information about, we can't have such important sacrifices being, lost because Dumb and Dumber here can't keep their mouths shut and lose to this kid or try and kill him. That's just not good. That's not good resource material management. And Ed kind of like, wait, what do you mean by sacrifices? ? And before they blow up the building, they knock him out and purposefully take him away from the destroying of the building.
Because the 2 cops come in and stop 66 from completely beating up Alphonse. And as you see this building burning down, along comes Envy, pulling out Edward, saving his life. And then just takes off after saying, make sure that Edward's taken care of. Which makes sense. Then, casting off again. These villains in this, they just like the whole disappearing trick, don't they?
They are very much in control of the situation, and I appreciate that.
We cut back to the police station, and Mustang's on the phone. So they've called in a bunch of alchemists, and he's getting a promotion.
Hooray!
Emily. Hughes is like, just keep an eye out. Because Hughes is secretly a really nice guy. At least from what I've seen so far.
Yeah.
He really loves his family.
He does. There's a scene with him talking about his daughter, and he's like, we're going to stop talking about this. And it's like, but now I want to talk about how cute my wife is. That art was just fun.
In the manga especially, Arakawa has a very signature comedic chibi simplified versions of people she uses a lot. It's very good. There's a lot of humor in the manga actually, and I feel like the first series played it up a little more, and this series doesn't really lean into that as much, but
it does feel more jarring in this one for some reason.
That's actually listen, I hate to be that guy on this episode.
I brought it up specifically because I know you have opinions on it.
Well, thank you. What little I have seen of the show was more from the original series, not Brotherhood. So that's anything I knew about the story basically came from that. And when I first saw Brotherhood, I actually really disliked a sort of change in tone, and I think this goes back to the fact that this is staying closer, quote unquote, more faithful to the manga version, but in a certain way that manga and anime are different mediums. Now hold on, stick with me.
No, you're right.
But just and especially when you're talking about comedy, and comedy relies so much on pacing. And I put out a tweet about this the other day that I can only think of 3 anime that were based on manga that get the comedy right. And the entire list that I could come up with was Cromartie High School, Nichijou, and Sailor Moon. And honestly, Sailor Moon is the one that most surprises me that it works, because it's the same kind of characters will occasionally just go simplified face and waka waka. But with Cromartie and Nichijou, those are I thought about putting Azumanga on there, but honestly I don't think that one works as well. Hot takes, look out. But the Cromartie and Nichijou, the way that those anime do humor is they are very slow burn. They are full of dead air, and I think that actually really works. And there's something about when you're reading a manga, it is self-paced, and you can kind of breeze over comedy at whatever pace feels right to you, feels natural to you. When you're doing it in anime, the timing is baked in, so you have to be really careful about how you do it. And even going back to the first episode, it was upsetting to me that we go the very first time when Freezer meets the brothers is he is just straight up killing folks. He is this guy on the run. We are in a gritty, hard hitting, people are just getting, blown up and killed. And they're having this fight. But the resolution to that fight, when I finally get there, it is resolved as a punchline to this "don't call me a shorty" joke that they love going back to. And it just it it's whiplash in the tone. It is like, hey, you were building up, you had the serious tone, and then you threw it away for the sake of this joke, which is a joke that like works for manga styling. Like you can go from panel to panel and switch things up. And again, coming from this as like, you know, a comic artist now, is like you can switch up styles panel to panel, and because, you know, panels cover a certain amount of time, but they also are separated from previous panels. And just like in anime, or like, you know, in television, movie, visual media like that, it's linear in a way where like the cut is somehow more jarring, because it is, you know, it is not self-paced. It is just like you're just giving people whiplash when you do it that way. And I think because this one stays closer to the manga, it is to its detriment in a lot of cases, especially around a lot of the comedy.
I would argue that the first series has the better comparison of the tone of the manga, and this is more accurate an adaptation of the plot of the manga.
That seems fair.
Well,
Like the comedy stuff, I feel like they're putting that in there because the fans are expecting it, because like the short jokes especially, I feel like they're just putting in there because
Still,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
go ahead. I don't really have a full thought.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'm kind of with Nick in the sense of sometimes the comedy feels okay in this series, retrospectively, on the whole. But there's a lot of times, like especially in some of the more high drama moments, where it will happen, and it is so much of a tonal whiplash that retrospectively, it's one of the things that irritates me the most about the series. It's like, oh, well, the joke was there, or something akin to that happened, and it was 1-to-1 in the anime. Like, sometimes creative license is okay.
I mean, that's why, you know, I say
Yeah.
the obvious thing, that it's a different medium, because a different medium is going to have better, you know, ideal techniques to use in it. Like, so very specifically in Brotherhood episode 3, original run episode 1, there is a scene where they're just like in the town square, and they have that moment of "Don't call me shorty" and "Waka waka,"
Yeah.
bonk on the head, whatever's going on. In Brotherhood, it is how I imagine feels, you know, faithful to the manga interpretation, where like they spend the whole joke of them yelling at each other, bonk on the head, and it's just that is the focus of the shots. In the original run, that joke is there, but they show that interaction starting, and then it occurs off screen in the background while, you know, like the serious tone, it goes back to the serious tone, and like other people are moving on while that happens in the background. And that honestly just feels more natural. It's making use of the nuances of the medium, this idea of you can do off-screen stuff, this idea of like, hey, yeah, no, it is like what would be like a small panel for a quick joke, it is now a quick joke, and then it happens off screen. Like, it is, honestly, I thought the original series may not, you know, story-wise or just presentation, maybe tone-wise, I'm not familiar with the manga either, to be honest, but like watching Brotherhood, I get vibes from the Watchmen movie. Y'all see the Watchmen movie?
Yeah, and I get where you're coming from with that. I don't necessarily disagree.
But just like the way that it's like you are being so like not just faithful. Like, I feel like faithful is the wrong word, because it's almost like being slavish to it. Like, you
Too
are
committed.
Yeah, you are compromising the medium you are adapting to for the sake of recreating the thing from the other medium. Like, you are going shot for shot in a way that is like, it feels like, you know, something created by fanboys who love the original and don't actually are too stubborn or too reverent of the original to actually adapt it to make a good, you know, version for the medium you are adapting it to. That is,
I agree.
That is like my overall feeling watching all of these episodes of Brotherhood. Honestly, it's just like I haven't seen much Brotherhood or even of the original. I've only seen, maybe a dozen episodes of the original run, but that is just the vibe. It's just like, oh yes, you are. It feels more like it is using manga techniques, which just do not work in anime.
I agree. And it's one of those, to your point, for example, yes, running gags are a thing. The short joke never goes away, and it never really changes. It very much feels like this is the panel from the strip, and we have to do it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be there all the time. We get it. He's short. He doesn't like it. Fine. 10, 15, even 20 episodes, you can put it to bed. It doesn't need to keep coming back. We can take it on good faith that this still happened.
Or like it can be in there and it can be like part of character interaction. Like the idea of like people picking on him and him responding to that, like that's fine if that's there, if that's just like a recurring character trait. But when it is the recurring cut to SD animation because of high reaction, like that is,
And yes,
and dedicating so much time to it rather than it being like a passed off thing that happens, it becomes like a gag we are dedicating time and style and like scene to. That is where it's just like, okay, that is more like in anime form, it required more resources than it needed as a throwaway panel on a page.
and when I say it recurs, that's what I mean. The whole SD, for Bob's benefit, SD means super deformed.
Thank you.
Chibi.
Yeah, it pretty much comic effect in this case. Those kind of gags still occur, and they don't stop. And if I have to be honest, it is as I said before, it really is the top thing that annoys me about the anime. To be honest, to the point that this is a reason I, until now, have not rewatched it in at least 10 years.
Mm.
It's just enough because it pulls me out. If there was a way for this show to exist kind of a la Dragon Ball Z Kai without that, I would probably go whole hog on that series instead.
Well, so in my memory, that was non-Brotherhood FMA.
To a degree, yeah. And again, it's been so long, I can't say I agree 100%, but I'm willing to believe it. Mm-hmm. And I would, honestly, because of this, I'm willing to go back and rewatch that. But that's something, I have points about that to discuss later.
Okay, fair enough.
My ultimate goal for people watching either of the anime is that it makes them want to go back and read the manga because the manga is incredible.
And that's good. Source material is typically better than what we get.
Sure. But just like this story specifically, I have a very strong preference of the manga over the shows.
Understandable.
Now that we've finished up episode 8, we'll move on to episode 13.
Yes.
The Beast of Dublith. Did I say that right?
Dublith, but yeah.
So like Dublin?
Yeah.
Gotcha. So this episode opens with a lady I don't know who is kicking the brothers out of her house.
Well, that's teacher, because she's not going to teach them anymore.
I gather that. She says, see if there's a train, get on it, leave. Because what you think you did was right, which was going through the gate, is not. I cannot teach you. Edward shows some restraint on Alphonse, and they leave.
Actually, if I can make one correction, and Joe, stop me if I'm wrong. I think actually her bigger issue is they joined the military.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
these things happen.
She doesn't like the government.
Izumi and I would get along.
Boys are heading out, and some dude tells them, "No, now that you're not her students." Wow,
that's
grammar.
her husband. He's a baker, and I love him.
Yes, he's great.
I should have.
He has a flex off with Armstrong at one point.
Oh my
and they
goodness!
become best friends.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I actually believe it.
Welcome to the meat show. Or
Actually, that is my favorite joke or moment in all of FMA, because as cartoonish as it was, it somehow still makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's like very in character, and it's incredible.
it's so good.
Sig explains now that you're not students, you can actually just talk to her like a normal human being, which didn't cross their mind. They run back to ask her about what they saw in the gate. She's like, well, you lost your whole body, Al. Maybe you saw more. And Al's like, what you talking about, Willis? And so Alphonse does not remember anything. She believes it was so traumatic for him that he's just repressed these memories, and she's going to go talk to one of her psychologist friends or psychiatrists. It depends on whether they hand out drugs or not.
She's got a
True.
guy.
And while they're talking, outside of the window, there's the lizard who crawls away. Probably to fight Batman or Spider-Man. Ooh, listen there.
Ooh, there goes your comic cred.
Well, anyway. Boy, you almost had me on a side tangent. I will not fall for your tricks.
I'll get you one of these days, Bobbert.
Cut to our good friend Mustang. He's playing with his, I guess now old boss. They're playing chess and having a conversation about how all these people that have worked under him are allowed to transfer with him into the city, which makes Mustang happy. He also gets the set, which moment, I guess. I'm assuming it has more importance later.
What was that? Because you kind of caught up.
Said I assume that it has more importance later.
Which part? It's the what had more importance there?
The handing off of the chess set.
Sort of.
But just complimenting the scene because it really felt nice. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it was really well done. I love it.
We meet up with Scar, who apparently taught a technique or something. He's been working out, and someone comes up to him and says, hey, you need to... This is not the path that you're meant to be on because make your dad angry. And at that point, Scar is attacked by bad guys that were sent to kill him.
He is a very wanted man at this point.
Extremely.
Mm-hmm.
What did he do? Is it just because he knows that technique?
So you remember in the maybe you do, maybe you don't, in the previous episode, part of why Hughes called Mustang, it was to discuss if the person known as Scar, hint, survived, because there was a bunch of dead bodies. Scar is on something of a murder rampage with a very specific target set group. They just all happen to wear military uniforms and also be alchemists. I'm sure that has nothing to do with the war being Scar and Ishvalan, and the war being called the War of Ishvalan Extermination.
Really?
More or less, yes.
Scar is like, are y'all gonna try and kill me? So he's gonna continue on his path, even though he knows that his dad would not approve.
It's not his dad, actually.
Who is it?
It's his brother.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's who died. His brother. That's why he's on this path.
Angry.
Yeah. Tell him to suck it up. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons I picked this episode, so we get a little bit of his stuff, because he's more involved in more of the series.
Scar is a very interesting character.
You can kind of gather that with the focus, but it's the angry character.
These two can be true.
Every episode or every series needs one, and I don't really feel like Edward fills that spot with his anger. This is more like a child anger. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I also just say, when I guess they're bounty hunters show up looking for him,
Yeah, mercenaries, bounty hunters, yeah.
Which that's pretty much what happens next.
The way he just like touches them and they explode, I'm just like, oh, this dude Kenshiro, this dude my boy
Yeah.
now. Okay.
That's the technique Ed was trying to emulate, essentially.
Oh.
Because what he do, his preferred method of killing is to literally get up close, palm your head, full hands like over the eyes, fingers outstretched, grasping your skull, and crap, I forget what it was called in Dragon Ball Super, but it's essentially bend and you die.
Gonna transmute this dude into a corpse.
Oh, yeah, essentially, I'm going to transmute you to dead. And yeah, that's what he do.
Cut back to the house where Al gets a message to, hey, we got some information. He goes out there because he's a dumb kid. He encounters 3 people who are able to subdue him because one happens to be really strong and happens to be really fast. The 3 take him back to their boss, who's like, hey, I'm Greed, and I will admit I may have groaned more than a little bit.
7 deadly sins, Bob.
That's why I groan.
Oh, that was the moment? That was the moment you realized? Oh, I'm so happy.
Al likes to argue is what he shows. He's like, this can't be chimeras because chimeras don't look like people. Greed's like, ha ha ha. Yeah. I've done it.
He demonstrates his technique of being that wormy guy from Men in Black who they keep blowing his head off.
Oh, yeah.
No, talk about unnecessary.
No, it's very Nessa to prove that I'm functionally immortal. Yeah, anyone can say that. Oh yeah, fool, kill me.
Exactly.
Then
And then he makes the argument that he's not immoral, though.
He's functionally immortal. He is not actually immortal.
He's got Wolverine disease.
Yeah.
Or what's the opposite of a disease?
Well, it's not even that, because he is essentially he's kind of got a clicker on how many times he can do that. It's a lot, but he can do it. Don't worry, it's kind of brought up later. I'm just kind of shorthand.
Ed makes his way there via beating up a poor lizard guy and starts interrogating Greed, asking him about lust and envy. Apparently they aren't friends. What I gathered from it.
Even though they wear the same uniform and have the same tattoo.
Yeah, they're all vampires, but apparently not all vampires get along. Which that was another moment where I was like, "Hey, how come you just don't have the other vampires who've been doing this do it for you?" And it's just like, then he's just like, "Oh," and then like I'll ask it, and I'm just like, "Oh, all right."
This is that moment where Joseph Joestar says, and then the next thing you will say is, and I already have your answer.
So Edward is like, yo, I'm going to take my brother back. Starts fighting, and Greed's like, Al out of here. He takes on Edward himself. Then Greed goops himself. This is a very interesting episode. This character is very interesting.
He is.
Greed. And Edward can't seem to slice through his armor. Tries he might. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to find the spots that are open. And Greed's like, no, you won't. And then coats his entire body with this penetrable armor. Edward keeps trying, but he is fighting a losing battle. Eventually, he figures out what type of material.
He's like, "Oh, you're mutating the carbon in your body."
Yeah, he told him earlier, he's like, I'm essentially the same thing as a human, materialistically. So, humans made from carbon.
So he's able to change it into something that's a little bit easier to beat up. Even though he's like, I swear, I don't know how Edward's still moving. He's able to land enough blows for Greed to get away.
Mad constitution.
Yeah.
and he's laying down. Greed might almost have the upper hand, and then the lady from the beginning appears.
Easy.
And
She's known through most of the series.
And she gives the best job description ever.
What are you?
What are you? I'm a housewife. Hard end.
Well,
And she kicks
that's the end of the episode.
Yeah.
She doesn't have students anymore, so she's not a teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mentioned this to Joe the other day. I think this is probably my favorite answer to who do you think you are? Who are you? It's like, I don't have to say all these quick, witty things. It's a fact of the matter. I'm a housewife. Asterisk.
I feel like with these episodes, there's a lot that I may have missed. Which obviously, with 4 episodes out of how many are there, Joe?
64. Yeah.
I looked it up because I was like, I like the story that's being told here, but I don't want to watch that many episodes of this show.
I understand it'd be hard to pick and choose like any sort of linear path.
Yeah, like it definitely touches on a lot of stuff that gets fleshed out a lot more over the course.
Do all 7 deadly sins get represented?
Yes.
Yes.
Are they all evil and bad guys? Oh, there's a good question.
If I may, I don't think Greed is a bad guy. And allow me to even go as far as to say, my biggest problem with this episode is this didn't have to be a fight. At no point did he ask anything truly unreasonable.
Yeah.
He just wanted to test the body.
Well, no, he wanted to know how Al happened. That's all he wanted. How did you Al? And
find your dead mother.
I mean, all that had to be was an exchange of information. Now, I get it's a very touchy subject, but at no point did he say, I'm going to kill people or I'm going to use this to take over the world. Like, no, I'm just self-interested and I want to live forever. Can you help me out? And I will give you your brother back. This all really falls on Ed. And kind of, I get it, being very protective of his brother, but not stopping and just saying, okay, maybe we talk this through. He didn't even necessarily have to tell him it revolved around his dead mother. He just happened to say, all he had to tell him was, I did a taboo, and my brother's body became one with the ether. And then I said, no, let me grab your soul. And it literally cost me an arm and a leg, but it worked. That's all he needed to do.
Is that how the prisoners were made into people, the armor?
More or less. This was more an attempt.
Have that knowledge?
He doesn't have that knowledge because it becomes revealed he is not in communication with them because he is he is the personification, manifestation of an individual's actual true greed at its fullest potential.
Okay.
And so therefore, what does that mean? That means he's in it for himself. He doesn't care what they're doing. It doesn't serve him at that point. Honestly, Ed could have even said, hey, these guys actually did what you're asking for. And he alluded to it, but I don't think he outright said it. If he said that, that might have put Greed on a completely different path. So I don't think he really wanted anything truly outrageous and wasn't being unreasonable. Yes, the whole I have your brother, but the trade-off for him is pretty light.
He did kind of start with a kidnapping instead of just being like, hey, check this out. What's going on?
I'm not saying he did it the right way, but I'm saying the exchange of I have your brother and I want you to kill these people and give me the secrets to the philosophers. And can you just tell me how your brother happened? This was really all just to get your attention. And in the most effective way I could come up with, because I am literally a character flaw embodied. I am a human foible embodied. But, you help me out, I give him back.
Transitioning
I don't
into
want it.
final thoughts. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chuck.
Oh, that was it. It's just my biggest issue with all of this was like none of this had to be. There's a whole fallout from this that could have been avoided entirely. In fact, I would say the whole course of the show would have drastically changed because of the fallout of this interaction.
I feel like this show has science, has magic, has all sorts of things, but I feel like it's just the long movie of the overprotective brother.
Yeah,
You're not entirely wrong.
There's something about like
This is just a show about family relationships.
watching
Yeah, kind of.
watching the way that Ed the fights that Ed has, and just like I kind of love the idea that he is actually like the book smart one, not the street smart one, but he's just like stubborn and hot-headed. And it's like that's why he got good at fighting. It's just because he got into so many fights, and that's why he just like the whole thing about like it even hit me when they were like years of training to get like good enough at alchemy and even fighting and stuff, and yet they still like over the course of years they never really got over their mom. And like you never really get over something like that, but at some point you do get used to like moving on your day to day with that pain. Like that's sometimes that's the best you can hope for with like recovering from grief or whatever. But like no, like they still do it, and at some point getting their hands on the Philosopher's Stone is still to get their body back so they can be normal, and then they would try to like go back to that same plan. Like it's there's something so just like hard-headed that it's just like this is a dude who's so stubborn that it's pushing forward plot points. And I kind of
having lost a parent in the last few years, I can honestly say I never once considered the but what if back from the dead, because while yes the pain was very strong and real, and I get obviously fictional thing, this is a thing that crosses everyone's mind. I just want my parent back, because typically most people love their parents. As I say, this is definitely one of those. I get their little kids. I was like, man, thank God we don't have magic science in this world.
mm-hmm.
You know how many quote unquote moms or mom abominations and baby abominations would be just running around out there. You know how many houses are getting burned down because of that?
Oh, I double checked that, by the way. The house burning down was when they left.
It wasn't when okay.
Like that was just a symbolic thing they did. They're like, okay, we are done here. We are like moving
scorched
away.
earth.
Yeah.
No, I mean that makes sense.
And fuck our dad wherever he is. He doesn't have a house anymore.
As they walk away, deuces, Dad.
Does that ever get explained?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna say, in episode 1, we saw a very mysterious set of eyes.
Is it the guy who's in the intro? The glasses?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, right, the eyes. Yeah, I was super confused by that.
Yeah. Joe, you're with me on why I'm saying no.
Yeah.
Okay. So, no. And that's not me being coy or silly or being like, no, haha, actually, he is him. No, it's not their father.
It's funny, though. He shows up at Pinaco's house. He's like, where's my house?
Yeah, he looks good for his age. I'll say that.
I had a thought. Where did it go?
Right over there.
Oh, right, there it is. Hey, how come they had that suit of armor in their basement?
Actually, that was in my notes. Al or Ed bonds Al to the suit of armor that just casually is owned.
Yeah. Well, so like, why does this family in rural whatever have that? Which, considering all of the books that the dad
Because
had
the
on
dad's
alchemy.
an academic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, like the dad is up to some nasty stuff. I have to assume at this point, like he is also dabbling in something that people don't like him to be dabbling in.
Maybe it's like a family heirloom.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
well, also like nobody else currently in the world is using any armor like this. Like we in the 5th lab, we do see 2 other examples of, I guess they're armors, but they don't even match.
Definitely more like samurai style.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like
Yeah.
they don't match what was going on, and like, you know, we're state alchemists, so we're constantly, you know, we're militarized police. We're constantly, you know, with like the high end of the army, and I don't see anybody using, you know, armor suits like that going in, like, because like, you know, you get it even when you talk about like future like heavy ballistics kind of outfits, you end up looking like a Jinro, and that's just another form of armor.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know where this suit of armor came from or why they have it, but like
History.
that's the thing, the history of like, so they're doing this magic circle raising the dead thing, and I'm going like, man, I want to know the history of how that armor got into this basement. That is a way more interesting story to me at that moment.
I mean, you could watch the show.
I could. Why would I do
You
that
could.
though?
I mean, you could Wikipedia the show.
Answers.
Oh, there we go.
I mean, you're not going to get the exact specific answer, but you'll get kind of a reasonable answer. Because the fair point.
There is an answer.
Yeah, there is an answer, and I don't believe the armor itself was actually specifically unique or important unto itself. But there is a
Explain why they
reason.
only use armor.
Well, you know, you only use armor before you have technology.
Mm-hmm.
That's my question. Is you see cybernetic arms and legs and such?
Well,
It's
steampunk.
mechanical,
Yes.
yeah, like
Why wouldn't you use that as your person instead of a suit of armor?
Again,
don't-
things evolve.
yeah.
Things change over time, Bob.
So
Over
your
the
first
stretches of time.
They're in the
first
pocket
thought
of
is
big
suit of
armor.
armor, not
Yes.
Metal Man.
Bob, there's a lot of questions that are answered that I'm trying really hard out of respect to Joe not to answer.
All right. Anyway, after the 2003 TV series, there was an animated movie called Conqueror of Shambhala that came out. And then after Brotherhood, there was a movie called The Sacred Star of Milos that came out. And then there were 3 live-action Fullmetal Alchemist movies.
What are you talking about? They never made that live-action Cowboy Bebop. What are you talking about?
It was on Netflix at one point. I don't know if it's still there. Or
They're
It's
all 3 are
still
currently
there.
on
all
Netflix.
3 are there. Oh my god!
Listen, these are all so bad that I'm very worried about the live-action Yu Yu Hakusho that's coming.
Any of the live. This is a thing that they do in Japan that I don't understand, but they make live-action movies of anime series, and
Yeah.
I don't get it. They
Yeah.
also make stage musicals of it, and I don't get it.
Like, did they not see the terrible Dragon Ball Evolution that was made, or the terrible
Oh my
Death
gosh.
Note that was made by Americans trying to make it live action?
Did you ever see the PSP game based on the live action Dragon Ball movie? It was bad.
Oh
I'm
god!
gonna be honest with you. I did not know that existed, but I'm also tragically unsurprised that it existed. We are all now dumber for knowing that.
Thank you.
There are also several like OVAs and stuff that came out.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of Full Metal Alchemist content out there.
Full Metal merchandising.
Also, any Critical Role fans may or may not know that Travis Willingham voices Colonel Mustang, and Laura Bailey voices Lust in this show.
I bet Bob can't. Well,
Fun
that's right.
fact.
Bob knows which one's Lust now.
The big booby one.
So, okay, we're going to come to the point of the show where I say, so here's some of the points I wanted to bring up, because Nick and Joe, you both kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. There are some things that the 2003 FMA did that I honestly appreciated more than what actually came to be in proper FMA, the manga / FMA Brotherhood. Just various story plot line, or not story plot lines, but like character lines that I thought were very interesting. Definitely, again, warrant me looking back and really reanalyzing that and seeing if my memory of them matches up. But I feel they were more interesting than some of the ones we got because some characters just kind of get dropped off after a while. Whereas in the 2003, they were actually quite relevant.
Well, it's a really interesting case because you have like adapting a manga isn't anything new, and in most
Right.
cases, if it's not finished, they'll do filler episodes until there's more to adapt. But in this case, they were like, I mean, I forget who suggested it, but like Arakawa was on board. Like, no, go ahead, make your own ending for it. So you get to see what like people were speculating about with the beginning of what like working with the bits that they had from the beginning,
Right.
which is super interesting.
Yeah, because again, seeing what more or less was meant to happen versus what was thought would happen was such a big dovetail
Yeah,
away from each other.
you
that
never
there were-
get it both ways with shows.
Yeah.
Like you either get the manga is completed so we can make the whole anime, or we're gonna make shit up and you're gonna have to deal with it because this is all that's gonna exist.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, we very much right now live in an era where we're kind of getting that because
Yeah.
I will keep coming back to Trigun Stampede does a lot of things very well, and I think learned from some of the failings of Brotherhood, that some of the things it gets critiqued on. And it's not really the manga, it's not really the original anime, but it's its own thing. But I would also say I don't think it would be as good as it is if Brotherhood, and I don't think it would exist if Brotherhood hadn't happened.
Yeah, and like also in that case, like so much time has passed that it's not really for the original generation for when it came
True.
out, it's for a new audience. Whereas this was only a few years later. They're like, no, we're just doing it
You're
again.
right. And to be fair, I didn't take that into consideration, but you're right. And I would almost say it would be well served for many reasons if maybe a few more years from now, not right now, maybe they revisited FMA.
You just want them to revisit everything.
So here's why I want them to revisit FMA. The elephant in the room discussed at the beginning of this series, this episode. I don't want to have to deal with that if I say like, oh yeah, I watched this and I enjoyed it, because I get why people have problems with it, and I respect that. I personally agree with it. That's what part of the reason I haven't come back to it either. It's like I'm having difficulty separating the art from one of the voice artists.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I've always been really good at like separating media from its creators and stuff, so
And for me, that's really weird because I typically am able to do that. But for this, for some reason, maybe it's because this is the lead character we're talking about.
yeah.
Maybe that's why it's so hard for me. But it's one of those like I don't want to contribute to this personally.
Mhm.
And therefore that's really my whole reason for revisiting it. It's like give me a way to not have to have this conflict. Otherwise, I don't care if they ever revisit it, frankly. I think Brotherhood, otherwise, it was fine the way it was. My critiques about the we're going to keep doing the super deformed, isn't it funny, aside, it was fine the way it was. It was more or less as long as it needed to be. And it did a fine job telling the story it did. But those are my thoughts.
Mine are more... It's okay show. I personally, and this is my taste, would have put episode 2 as either episode 1
Mm-hmm.
or episode 5.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just seemed like it's a really cool first episode. And bang, this is how they were made. And it's not jarring, it makes sense. But
It does feel more like a exposition dump than like a revealing of plot elements.
Mm-hmm. Another better way they could have done that is just kind of slow drip fed it over the period, over several episodes, because it's not a story that had to necessarily be told in one episode, especially for being made for people, an audience that already was familiar with it. It could have been better served.
overall, the show is just me. It was, how you want to put it? It's at the very top of expectations of anime. Did nothing to thwart what my preconceived notions are. It did a very good job of what it was. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very much a serviceable show, is what I'm kind of taking away from what you're saying.
I would recommend checking out more of it on your own, at least just a little more around the beginning, to get more of a feel of like how hard it goes with some things. But yeah,
Yeah, without giving anything away, it does. It is not afraid to tackle tough subjects.
And I will pursue other episodes outside of the shows I'm watching right now, which I didn't actually watch anything since last talking. I'm sorry with that.
You knew what I was going to ask.
But would put this, if or to rank it, 7 out of 10.
yeah,
It's good. It's just not what I've seen so far. It's not great.
Fair.
I enjoy it. It's just would blend in with other anime for me.
I could see that.
Yeah, like if I'm quiet, it's because I am looking at like episode comparisons, and like I think I'm still of the opinion that as far as like starting goes, I think the 2003 series is better. Like it is more engaging and less like, hey, we're dumping a lot of these plot points out here.
I hear a lot of passion from Chuck and Joe, so I know that you guys know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm willing to watch more episodes, but
If
a
I
chance to
may.
learn.
If I may, and if you're able to find it, I would highly encourage, personally, the way I don't know if this is the same way Joe experienced it, but the way I experienced it, which was, oh, there's this new show, Fullmetal Alchemist, in 2003. I highly recommend watching that first, and then going into Brotherhood. But you don't have to. Everything you need to know is more or less there in Brotherhood.
From
Go ahead.
what I'm seeing, it basically was it episode 8 where they go to Lab 5?
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically that is about where the stories start to diverge, is what I'm seeing. But in the 2003 series, that takes about 20 episodes to get to that fight with the other armors.
Yeah.
Like I said, like you get more time with characters, and it like kind of build up to the bigger stuff later on.
Well, what's his name? Yoki, that was there, that sold out Scar at the camp.
Yeah.
You get his whole story in FMA. You do not get that here. You get like a very high level overview, and that's it. It's literally, this happened off screen, and it was very important to him, but nobody else.
but I I'm definitely getting a feeling that like I think they took a little more time and set up again, I'm kind of just guessing here, but like it seems like they've set up a better pacing in the 2003 series, and then by the time we get there and you go to Brotherhood, since Brotherhood is already like midstream at that point, I bet you can sort of, you know, pick up everything you need to know and have like a better foundation with it, and then get into some of the more interesting later on elements that the story is actually looking to address.
I would say
like
that's
I think that's what I want to do. I think being able to do it that way, I will be able to like watch and enjoy the show without grinding my teeth.
Mm.
But yeah, there's I don't know why the show became such a like yeah, like around high school it was just so everywhere. Like did they make a deal with Suncoast or something, like or was it just a show of the what I don't know.
Well, it's what, 2003 and 2013 you said, or 16? It's a new one, Brotherhood.
Brotherhood
2009.
2003, 2009.
Yeah.
So imagine being a kid in middle school, seeing your older brother watching this cool show called Fullmetal Alchemist. Somehow, through whatever mean.
Mhm.
And then finding out that you can watch it later as Brotherhood. This is so cool. I remember when my brother was watching this, but this is so much better because you have discovered something.
Sure, but like there's anime coming out all of the time, and I'm just trying to figure out like, or trying to remember maybe like what it was about this that, you know what?
Anime Club.
Mm-hmm.
That was how we got introduced to other stuff, basically. If that and Toonami.
Well, I
And-
mean, yeah, okay, yeah, Toonami. Honestly, that's kind of your answer. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why we have it in the late night Toonami / Adult Swim tier here on
Yeah.
our mega list.
Because I was gonna say, I was graduated from high school when FMA hit Adult Swim. The 2003 FMA hit Adult Swim. And I can tell you, it wasn't a school club that did it, but like a buddy of mine I worked with at the restaurant I was working at the time, and who's also the very reason I knew or learned about Hellsing, the original anime.
Heck yeah.
So he and I would talk about that, and like a couple other colleagues I worked with, and that's how it started. It was just like your little group of anime fans were watching the only public available broadcast
Yeah.
anime shows.
Yeah.
There wasn't a way to like get any of the more obscure stuff that was like only out in Japan unless you had mega connections.
Yeah.
Unless you had an uncle who was in the anime clubs like in the 80s and
Yeah.
used to, you know, literally send VHS tapes of recorded off air back and forth across the ocean.
Mhm.
Also show about a 14-year-old angsty badass fighter, popular in middle schools, really, you don't say.
Shonen
Yeah.
has Shonen. That's
Yeah,
what
so
that is.
you know what, I think
They
I'm putting
gave
it
us all the
together.
shonen shows.
Yeah. It was definitely it knew its target audience, and it came in at the right time, you know, especially in America, for the right audience it was looking for to kind of seed itself in as this classic to by way of perception.
Yeah, like even looking at it today, like you know, it's just like you're saying, it's fine, it's perfectly fine. I think if it's a touchstone, it is more just because like in terms of availability, it had popularity, and that's why it's a cultural touchstone, not necessarily for any like notable inherent things about it. It just like
Also, those military uniforms were real easy to cosplay.
Oh yeah.
yeah,
I
just
can imagine
ask
that.
Prince Edward, who's the prince who did the thing.
What?
All right, don't worry about it. UK people are laughing hard right now.
Yeah. I think I know who you're referring to. I just don't know if I have the right name, so I'm gonna.
It's Harry?
Oh
Anyway.
yeah. I think you're right. I think it is Harry.
Okay. Anyway, speaking about blending into other anime, where do you think this opening theme fits in our rankings?
Oh, good lord! I was waiting for this.
I had forgotten this opening.
I don't.
So it was such a slow start, and I'm like, oh, is this how it's gonna be? Then the beat drops.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, I just start bobbing my head. So I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. Then it slows down. I'm like, okay. Then it comes back, and I'm like, so I'm gonna put this at 3.
Really? Above
So close
Trigun?
to.
I mean,
Yes,
I
this
agree
is.
with him on that, actually.
Wow.
I enjoyed this. I listened to it on the way home from my parents, thinking I need to get home.
I don't think FMA, with the exception of maybe one, because they have multiple openings throughout the series,
Sure.
being 60 plus episodes. There's like maybe one I really didn't care for, but because it was so much tonally, by comparison, relaxed or softer in its presentation, it didn't have a good, what I would call a heavy beat drop. And it felt just more kind of general pop than anything. It's not bad. It just wasn't for me. But I don't think this show has a bad opening.
Honestly, just like, to me, it felt very anime. But I mean that
Yes.
in a sense of like, every once in a while I will watch just like some anime from the current season or whatever, and just like, when we look at the other things up here with like Through the Night from Outlaw Star, Tank from Cowboy Bebop, and even HT from Trigun, like, those are all songs that stick out from the usual like anime opening song fare. This one is just like, it just sounds like one of those, which I think, again, it's like a 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
like it is.
That's anime.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, no, it's being a show. It's fine. Yeah.
To be fair, though,
Mhm.
considering where I see it in our list,
To be fair.
where I see it in our list, and then with the exception of maybe Trigun, looking at everything beneath it,
Yeah.
I feel 3 is right, because yes, it is very much what I would call the progenitor of the standard anime intro, or what could be typified as a standard anime intro. This was that archetype. This was not necessarily the prototype, but version 1. And as such, it's going to sound like that because that's what everyone else is trying to emulate, because it is popular. It was the big popular one and still is.
Yeah.
At least they didn't say Big O 17 times.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm looking at Big O and I'm just like,
Listen,
it's
I'm
better than
ignoring
Big O.
Yeah, it was definitely, honestly, I still think Smile Bomb was better than Big O, but I was in the minority on that one.
I mean, I also like Smile Bomb, but this isn't our list. This is rankings
This is
according to
the
Bob.
top.
That's the label on the list, and so we're gonna.
Hey, you learn.
We command enough of this show.
Yes, true. Speaking of commanding.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna say, I think unless anyone else has something, or I'm forgetting a segment, do we need to command Bob to make another selection?
Well, you said you didn't get a chance to watch anything, and there was no Android waifu to rank in this show, so yeah, I think it's about that time.
I mean, we could just do the waifu rank if we really run into this as being an issue.
No, there's too many good ones in this show.
Yes, Android waifu versus and songs are pretty good.
Is Al a cyborg? Get it out!
No, because there's nothing electric
no
about him
meat.
except his personality. There.
I don't want to think about a 12-year-old boy as a waifu.
That too.
But he's a person. He has personhood.
He is people.
And his body has been replaced with synthetic parts, but that still compromise or compose his body.
Cybernetic would imply the existence of some organic material.
He has no meat. He has no electricity. No, he is not a cyborg.
He is the perfect vegan option.
The soul bonding sigil is drawn in blood. If we consider blood as a subcategory of meat,
But it
No.
is not
there is
his
a meaty
blood.
component.
I don't.
It is not his blood, therefore it's not part of Al.
Hey, I routinely donate blood. It's okay if you don't have homemade, store-bought is fine.
I'm not saying it isn't, but it is not in Al. It is on what has become Al. And much like paint, I don't consider paint part of me if I get it on my hands.
Oh, okay. Well, listen,
Eh.
you come finger paint with me sometime, and we'll see if you
Agree
hold
to
that.
disagree.
All right, so we
yeah.
have 3 shows left in the late night Toonami tier. We have Do Cyborgs Dream of Existential Philosophical Conundrums? Speaking of cyborgs. We have Listen, growing up was hard enough before this space pirate robot sprouted out of my forehead. And we have This Ain't No Zaku Boy.
This ain't no Zaku boy.
You know what? Just because of the way you said Zaku boy, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to give it the hard sell, but all right.
Hey, Bob.
We're gonna get more Gundam.
Yeah, you ready for more Gundam?
Oh, hopefully they aren't so international.
I mean, arguably, space is a nation. Various countries in the world are international by definition of where you're
Are we
from.
going to the Sombrero Planet?
No,
Oh
no,
my
there are no
God.
extra planets in this. But I hope you like, space-based initiated Vietnam Korea analog,
Oh, okay.
because
So we are going to be watching Gundam: the 08th MS team. And I feel like I need to give that background. We have already watched G Gundam.
Correct.
G Gundam was a sort of Gundam alternate universe where it is more like super robots and big soap opera and all of that.
Point of order, it was the first alternate Gundam
True.
universe.
But 08th MS team takes place in the like main canon Gundam universe where it is extremely realistic. Like this is like if we were making human shaped tanks kind of in a world that we know and using like it is very relatable. It is not it the fact
It's not magic science. It actually has kind of a hard science to it.
Yeah,
almost.
there's not the fantasy elements. They never shrink wrap a horse. This
No
is,
horses?
I didn't say no horses. They're just all natural.
Yeah.
Okay.
In this case, a horse is just a horse.
Of course.
of course.
The genres for this show are listed as military science fiction, drama, and hard science fiction.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
and honestly, like the fiction. That's the thing. I feel like this is the least fictional of all the Gundam. Like I think this is also one of the ones where they spend the least time in space. Like my memory of the show is there's a lot of time like in jungles and even on foot.
So point of order, at least half of the original Gundam and most Gundam series is in space. Just space, period. Tim Curry says space. This is people coming from space to fight the war on Earth to drive off the invaders from space.
Yeah, and like that's the thing. Like this is a side story. Can you tell I like this show and I'm excited about it and I already want to talk about it?
I mean, you're beating me to all the points I would love to discuss, so yeah.
But just like this is a side story, so like this is about like even more like just like boots on the ground kind of grunts. It is not necessarily about like the main hero. Like this is like
these are the no-name red shirts.
I was gonna say these are like, hey, the 3 guys from Cowboy Bebop always playing cards at the table? This is kind of like, what if we followed them for a show in Gundam?
Except, to give you a more clear point, Bob, the original Gundam series takes place over the course of a year. This takes place, it's not just a side story, it's a side story within that time frame.
Yeah, like this takes what, a week, maybe? A month?
A couple months.
Yeah. But it's cool, and is going to be like, there is less disbelief you need to suspend, I think is what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
So basically the last gun, like trying to compare it to the last Gundam is
They are vastly different beasts.
they flip. The only thing that's the same between them is humanoid robots that people get inside and use to fight. Like that one was basically the Olympics of fighting, the Kumite Olympics. This one is like, no, this is like war and shit. But yeah, that's exciting. Oh, I can't wait.
Shall see. It should be good. Definitely seem very hyped, and it sounds like a very much a transition.
Yeah, this is gonna be cool. I think this is gonna be cool. All right. Anybody else have anything to share before we call it a day?
Nope.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I really like this show. Go read the manga.
All right. We've been at this for 3 hours, so I think it's about time that we close it up. We'll see what I can edit it down to. And until next time, thank you for joining us, everybody.
Have a good day.
Watch anime. No, wait, don't.
Deep in the Weebs is a show by Chuck, Nick, Joe, and Bob. Our theme music is Kawaii Friends by C. 3. You can find our show on YouTube, or subscribe to the audio-only version on iTunes or wherever podcasts are served. Oh, wait, no, I do have one joke thing I was going to say that I forgot about.
Okay.
In addition to everyone memorizing the list of human ingredients, the other thing is that you can always tell a Fullmetal Alchemist fan, because if you greet them by saying Fullmetal Alchemist, they will reply with Fullmetal Alchemist in a slightly different tone.
Also,
oh my god, yeah.
Which is
also
a
to
joke
that point,
about the commercial breaks.
there's also the recognition of Fullmetal Alchemist fans by October 3rd every year.
Yup.
Yeah, we didn't see that in these episodes, did we?
Yeah.
It comes up in one of the episodes between what we saw, because it's when the pocket watch gets stolen.
Oh,
Right.
okay. There's a hint of it in the opening too, but
Right.
Yeah.